Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Build Your Copywriting Business podcast. Hey there, Kate.
Hello, hello.
Hello. Okay, guys, today we are going to dig into what to do when you have too much copywriting work. Now, I know if you were just getting started, you might be
what
thinking,
a good problem to have.
yeah, exactly. Like, big deal. Too much. There's no such thing as too much. Au contraire, my friend. There absolutely is such a thing as too much. And especially when you are working freelance, and it's very easy to say yes to every project that comes your way, which means that when saying yes to everything, it's very easy to become overloaded quickly.
Yeah, and if you're a people pleaser, which no judgment here. Right? I feel like at some point we want to please people. We want to make our clients happy. We want to feel good. We want people to like us, blah, 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 blah. It can be very easy also to not set your timelines accordingly. So to not say yes to everything and then also say yes right away. I'm going to get this to you tomorrow to everything. And so even if you're just starting out, I would recommend listening to this, saving it for future reference. But this might happen a lot faster than you even realize, especially if you're in that mode of yes, and also I'll do it as quickly as possible.
Well, and it really depends on the timeline because theoretically, even one project could be too much copywriting work if the timeline is too tight. If you're talking to maybe it's a new client or maybe it's a current client, doesn't really matter what kind of client. But if you're talking to them, they say, "Oh my gosh, is there any way you could get this to us by Thursday? That would be so great." And you're looking at your schedule and you're going, "Ooh, well, I've got all this stuff tomorrow, and then I have dinner out with friends, and then I have to do this for the kids." If you're starting to get a little bit nervous there, it could be that even one project would be too much copywriting work. It just, your schedule could not accommodate it. So the things we're talking about now are, yes, they will definitely apply as you start building up your copywriting roster of clients, but it may truly start applying sooner than you think, because I adore clients, certainly. But the number of clients who said, "Oh my gosh, I really need this. Is there any way we could get it done super quickly by XYZ time?" And often they don't need it by then. But
I was gonna say, I love when that happens and you rush and you do a great job and you stress out over it. And then they're like, "Oh, we're not going to implement this for another 2 months."
Yeah. Clients do love a quick timeline.
Thanks.
But of course, you do have to take clients at their word. If they say, "I need it by this time," or if they ask, then evaluate your schedule, which we're going to get into. Yes. Evaluate your schedule. There you go. That's it. End of episode. Just kidding. Let's dig in.
Yeah. The first place to start, I think, is knowing how you react when you get overwhelmed. Are you the type of person who rises to the challenge? You like the challenge, you like the pressure, maybe you work well under pressure, and maybe you're doing it even reluctantly, but nonetheless, you're like, "I know I'm going to get this done. I'm not going to stay up all night if I have to hit my deadline. I procrastinate." Whatever got you in this place that you're feeling overwhelmed. You either rise to that challenge, or you could be the type of person that buries your head in the sand versus tackling it head on. You get very like, "Oh, it's too much. I just want to hide and I'm going to run away from what I know I need to do." And again, neither good nor bad for either of these things. It's just good to know which camp you fall into.
Well, and sometimes some of us, and I will absolutely say that I am one of them, don't realize we are overwhelmed until after the fact. I think I might have mentioned this on the podcast previously, but I'll do the work and I'll take us on. Yep, I can take that on. I can take that on. And for me, I know that a cue is, I'm so focused on getting the work done that I don't even notice the emotions that are going on around it. And so some people may find that they're snapping at family members, or they're not sleeping well, or something. For me, it is always a sign. My internal voice starts to say things like, "Everybody wants a piece of me. Everybody wants a piece of me." And then I start singing the Britney Spears song. But genuinely, that is absolutely what happens. But that is my cue of, "Oh shoot," because I'm not even processing the emotions yet, but this starts to pop up in my head and I go, "Oh, okay, hit the brakes. I've put too much on my plate." So I agree. Start to look for your own personal signs that if you haven't gotten to that breaking point, maybe you are rapidly approaching it.
My personal sign is, should I become a veterinarian? Should I go become a barista? Like, should I make bread? Insert career. I've thought of switching careers, and guess what? That's it's not, I love copywriting, but that's my cue. It's also my cue when I need to take a vacation. So there's that.
I do. I know that about you, and I love that about you, that when you get overwhelmed, you don't go, and believe me, it's just as absurd as they want a piece of me without me giving those pieces away. But it's the concept of like, oh, I'm not going to evaluate my workload. It's, I'm going to burn everything to the ground and start a new career.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
We all have our things.
We have our things. Yeah. So no judgment. Yes. But if you fall into the bury your head in the sand camp, pay extra close attention to this episode, because it's good to be prepared. You want a game plan. Mm-hmm. I mean, for either, for no matter what camp you fall into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So you will find yourself at this point, if you're listening or you're noticing or you're getting in touch with yourself or you're just looking at your schedule and you think, oh my gosh, I can't get all this done. We're going to start first with steps to fix the problem. And then we'll talk a little bit more about how to try to avoid it in the future. Mm-hmm. But the first one is you have to put the brakes on anything else coming in, right? If you're looking at your schedule and you are already to the max and maybe even beyond that, you have to pump the brakes on everything else, which means that if you have any proposals out in the world, just because you sent through a proposal doesn't mean that they come back and say, yes, I'm ready to get started. You work on a first come first serve basis. So if you're working with other people, you can say, oh, I'm so sorry. I have some projects that have come up. I can start this now next week or whenever is a reasonable time for you. Be upfront and straightforward with them. But if you have proposals out there in the world, you may just have to pump the brakes on getting started. I know that we all want to make our clients super happy and be like, yes, I can start immediately, but usually they don't need you to start immediately anyway. I do want to say very quickly though, that if you're hearing this and you're like, oh, okay, then I should probably also stop pitching. No, scale down your pitching. Don't be sending out 5 pitches, but don't stop. Because as you know, when you stop pitching is when you experience that dry spell. And when you pitch, you're kind of seeding projects for the next couple of weeks to couple of months. So don't stop. Dial it back, certainly, but you don't want to completely stop. We're talking specifically about proposals that you have out in the world for projects that are just about to kick off.
Yeah, that's a great point, especially because I think this is how the feast and famine, like you're in the feast mode right now, right? If you have too much work and then dry spell and then, oh my gosh, too much work. And it's unsustainable to continue working like this, of completely stressed out, overworked, too much work to zero. To keep going 0 to 60 back and forth is just, you don't need that. And so this process will help hopefully smooth out that process a little bit. But then to Nikki's point, continue pitching so that you don't hit the completely, oh my God, now I have no work. Mm-hmm. But you saying no, if this is a good time to practice saying no to projects. If someone comes to you, maybe not someone you would pitch, but if a referral or a past client wants you to redo a project and they have a timeline in mind that they can't work with your timeline, practice saying no. But you can also set time for when you could start the project. If you're like, oh, I really love this project, I really, really want to take it on, I don't have time right now. Estimate when the bulk of your work is going to wrap up, and then say that you can kick off at least a week after that, because the temptation of like, okay, I'll end all this work. This is, chaotic right now, but it's going to end by the end of the week. And then I'll have time next Monday. Next Monday might come and this work may have bled most likely into that week. And so as good as we try to be about estimating project timelines, there's always, we need buffer. So give yourself that extra buffer. That's like me. I don't show up on time usually. So I was meeting a friend for lunch the other day at 3:15 and I said, I'm going to meet her at 3 because then I will be on time.
Do you think that she told you it was 3:15 thinking that you were going to be late anyway? Do you think she was already trying to build it in?
No.
She should have been 4. Yeah.
Yeah. Which good for her if she had done that.
Yeah. She knows her target audience.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, and the thing too is that it's we think of saying no as being like, oh, I'm being so tough. I'm being so mean. No, all you're doing is communicating, and it can be very, very simple and very pleasant and nice. And just say, oh, unfortunately, I'm booked up for the next however long, the next couple of weeks, but I could get started with it on, XYZ date. or, give them an actual number, a date, give them a date. I could get started, next
I'm available
next
on pumpkin.
Pumpkin. Okay. Clear communication is key. But yeah, just let them know. And by the way, it's a good thing for a client to see that you are booked up. It always kind of makes me do a little bit of an eyebrow raise whenever anyone's like, yeah, my schedule's completely open. I can get started right now. Like, okay, I don't necessarily count it against someone, but I'm always kind of a little curious. Whereas on the other hand, if you're saying, unfortunately, I am all booked up with client work, but I can get started in this date, that says to me, oh, this is an in-demand copywriter. People want to work with this person. So yes, I'd better lock her down or him down or them down for this date so I can get started with them.
Yeah. So at this point, you've said no to things that you can't take on and or pushed work further out than you even think you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's time to focus on the work that you currently have on your plate and what is your game plan. And so one of the first places I would start is, can you bring on a copywriter friend to help with any of it, to offload some to that person? So even if you're breaking even from paying them out to help, is that worth it compared to either not meeting your deadlines? Certainly, like, you need to meet these deadlines, especially like there's just no question. So if you are in doubt about meeting these deadlines, that's something I would consider doing. Okay, who's in my network? And CCA students, you have a whole group of people willing and able to help you out. And so again, even if you have to pay them and it's taking a cut from your what you're making from the client, from the project, that's still worth it so much, especially because the idea of getting repeat work from this client and whatnot is vital.
Exactly. And you don't have to, yes, you should pay your friend, but you don't even necessarily need to say to the client, because you're going to look at the work before you send it through. So it's getting your seal of approval. So it's not like you have to say to the client, okay, and I got someone else to write this, because the client doesn't need to know how the casserole was made. I don't know why. There's some saying, I can't think of what it was. Sausage. That's it. I don't know why I went with casserole.
You're from Wisconsin.
I know, right? How the cheese is made. Your client doesn't need to know that, because you are still going to be, it's still passing through you. So it's getting your seal of approval. But yes, it's always good to have resources, backup plans, friends that you know that you can reach out to if stuff gets crazy. Because again, like Kate said, she said it, I heard her say it, I'm going to say it again so that nobody misses it. You cannot miss a deadline. You cannot. All of your credibility is absolutely gone, which is, of course, why we're having this conversation. Because if you can meet deadlines, then, like, I don't know, just turn it in whenever. That's not gonna go over well. The next point is to prioritize. I personally, when I have a whole bunch of different projects on my plate, I look at them and I shut down. I get overwhelmed and I shut down. When I look at a big project, I just kind of stare at it and I can't make any sense of it. So I and many other people need to organize that project. So prioritize it in terms of what needs to get out the door first. Okay, well, this project, all right, I have to deliver this on Thursday, this on Friday, this on Monday. And I know that it sounds simple, right? Like, well, obviously you do the Thursday project first, then the Friday. That's not always how our minds work, right? Sometimes we'll go, well, this one has some little aspects to it. And maybe I could do the little aspects. I mean, that's the one's due on Monday, but maybe I could do the little aspects. And then that would give me some momentum for like the Thursday project. But all you're doing is you're using up the time that you needed to put to that Thursday project. So you're pushing the Thursday project out faster while Thursday keeps getting closer and closer and closer. Then you may be exacerbating the problem because now you have even less time than you did before. So make sure you're prioritizing by the actual deadline, not by like, well, I'm going to do this little thing here first, or this seems more fun, so I'm going to do that first. Your deadlines should drive your actions.
Yeah, 100%. I think once you have that priority list too, then break it out into small chunks to make it more manageable. So if you need a small task to get you going, then break out that, okay, this Thursday deadline, this project, it's really big. I have all these components, elements that I need to do to complete it. Break those out then to say, okay, just going to use an example. Maybe you have 7 emails you're writing email sequence that has 7 emails. Okay, I'm going to outline what the topic of each of these emails is. What is email 1 going to be about? What's email 2 going to be about? Outline it. Okay, then I'm going to, depending on how you work, maybe you're like, okay, I'm going to put I'm going to brainstorm subject lines for email number 1. I'm going to brainstorm what my first line is, my hook of email number 1. Then I'm going to do a rough draft and just word vomit onto the page and get it out. Then I'm going to go back and edit it. However your process works, but breaking it out step by step by step, not to say, I'm going to write this whole email series, or not even, I'm going to write this whole email 1, breaking out each of the components of that email. Or again, if it's a sales page, okay, outlining what are the chunks that need to be in here. What does that look like? Focusing on writing one section headline at a time, on one section at a time, one call to action of each of those sections at a time, just breaking it out. And if you have to go smaller too to get yourself going, break it out even smaller.
Exactly. So we've gone through some tactics, and now we're going to move into a little bit of tough love, my friend. This is the part that you're not going to want to hear, and I think maybe you were hoping that we could avoid this. This is that you may have to work some hours that you don't want to work. You may have to work some weekends if your deadlines are coming up. You may have to. I was going to go out to dinner with my friends who are in town. If you need those hours to work, then you may not be able to go out for dinner. Or if you're going to go out for dinner and you usually have a glass of wine, but you're going to try to work afterwards, and you know that if you have that glass of wine, you're just going to want to go to bed. What we're saying is you may need to make some, yes, clearly,
Comes from
very
experience.
specific example. Yeah. You may have to make some tough and uncomfortable decisions. Yeah. And the reason that I say this is tough love is because this is not the opportunity to feel like a victim or get angry with your clients and I say this with so much love. And again, we're going to talk about how to make sure this doesn't happen in the future. But I say this with so much love. You did it to yourself, friend. You did it to yourself. So sometimes we have to deal with the consequences of our choices. A good friend of mine has 2 young daughters, and talking a lot about consequences of choices. And you may be dealing with the short-term consequences, and that does sometimes involve working weekends or giving up some plans or that kind of thing. Is it fun? No. But it may be painful enough that it will teach you a lesson moving forward to make sure that you keep an eye on your schedule and you set up the boundaries that you need to set up to make sure that this doesn't happen in the future.
Yeah. And to be clear, if a client is coming back to you, changing the timeline on you, or changing the scope of work, or changing the creative brief, if there are changes to the fundamental project, that's a very different situation. You're going to communicate with your client, hey, what we agreed to is this. I have other work in my queue. I cannot get to it any sooner than the agreed upon timeline, and have that discussion. That's a very different situation. We're talking about you took on extra work. You said you could deliver it at a time, and now you're up against that deadline, and it's feeling very, very stressful and overwhelming because you have a ton of different projects, or maybe, like Nikki said, one really big project that you're just didn't give yourself enough time for. So know that those are 2 separate things, and if it is because of the client, that is a different situation. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that I, just a second ago, we said you cannot miss your deadlines, and that is absolutely true. But I'm going to, and I almost hesitate to say it, but we're all grown-ups here, so I'm going to put this out there. If you have been, who knows what she's going to say next? No, if you have been working with the client for a while, you have a good relationship with the client, you've been working with them for a while, this is not your first project with them by any of the stretch of the imagination, and you know that the deadline is not a hard deadline.
Yeah.
You have a one-time, literally one-time opportunity, get out of jail free card, whatever, one-time opportunity to say to your client, and again, this is if you know that it's a deadline that is not a hard deadline, to say, hey, I can absolutely still get this to you on Thursday, but would it be at all a problem if I got it to you on Friday instead? You can do that. Again, the stipulations, it must be a long-term client. You cannot do this with a client you just started to work with. And number two, it has to be a client that you know, or you are almost 100% positive that the deadline does have a little bit of wiggle room. In that case, you can make that request of a client once. Once is understandable, but any more than once, which is why I save that up if you possibly can, save that up.
Yeah.
Because the second time it happens, you go from being a human to being unreliable. And then they don't know if they can trust you when you make a deadline. So, and even that one time with some type of clients might make them go, ooh, I'm nervous about this. So use that card judiciously and maybe avoid using it if you possibly can. I think in my 20 years as a copywriter, I think I've done that maybe, I know I've done it once, maybe a maximum of twice. Again, different clients, of course, but maybe a maximum of twice. And that is in the course of 20 years. So like I said, I'm mentioning this because I want, Kate and I always want to be fully transparent, give you all of the information. But if you're going to use that option, use it carefully and save it for when you really, really need it.
Yeah. One of the tactics I use often is clients, if they set a Friday deadline, that's the one time where I'll often, if I truly need it, to say, do you have any wiggle room? Can I get it to you on Monday? Because most clients aren't working the weekend that I work with. In fact, none of them that I know of work the weekend. Actually, one might, but anyway, in all my years, one client who I know just was always on, and hopefully has figured that out and set boundaries for themselves. But for me, those extra 2 days is like, freedom, just breathing room, wonderful. And obviously, if I'm delivering it on a Friday, the chances of them actually digging into it on a Friday, I feel pretty confident that they're not going to, they want it for Monday. And often they're not thinking about freelancers working on the weekend. They're kind of thinking on that Monday through Friday schedule. So if that was kind of also when you agree to deliver by end of week or whatever, that can be an easier wiggle room to get, 2 extra days versus potentially 1. Because I do think even if you ask, hey, do you have any wiggle room on the deadline? You're not asking for an extra week wiggle room on the deadline. You're asking maybe for an extra 24 hours. Yeah. And that's it. And so obviously if they come back to you and say, oh, actually, we don't need it till next Thursday. Great. That's great for, it worked out. But to presume that you could push it out further is, I wouldn't presume. That's all
I agree.
To say.
24 hours max. Well, and that's actually a great segue into how do you keep this from happening in the future? I think the first thing is to build in automatic buffer with every project. And again, I know that when we want to accommodate our clients and we want to accommodate as many clients as we possibly can. So we think in terms of like packing everything in that we possibly can. But more often than not, packing things in is going to, it's not like we have a physical job where we build this and then we build this and then we build this. It's a creative, strategic job requires a little bit of wiggle room, requires some flexibility, and you need to build that in. The sleep on it time, you need to build that in. And Kate, as you were saying, the Friday, Monday deadline thing, if you have that opportunity, tell them you will deliver it on Monday, but in your head think, all right, I have to get it to them by Friday.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Which is a nice way to kind of build in some automatic wiggle room. But again, tell them you will deliver it. Give them obviously a date, and you will deliver it by that date. But in your head, plan on delivering it sooner. Or if you want to still deliver it on that date, but you're going to have it done by then, always build in buffer. Number one, because life happens, right? Yeah. Stuff happens. God forbid something happen. You have to. I don't know why I'm going.
I was to say
very
funeral.
dark.
I had a funeral recently.
Oh, yeah.
It happens, but I think if you're thinking, well, Nikki and Kate, yeah, what if someone passes away? Of course, I'm going to tell my client that I can't deliver. And to some extent, yes, of course. Like obviously, a funeral and being with family far more important. At the end of the day, your relationships are more important. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the thing I come to, and again, this happened to me recently, and I did have one freelance project. I should have started on that project and I did long before that, major life event. And so, of course, I let the client know, because I wouldn't be available for follow-up or questions, for the next few days after that. But the actual project, I had started long before the actual deadline. And so that would be my other tactic and piece of advice to employ whenever you start a new project. Even if you're saying, okay, we're not kicking this off for another 2 weeks, and then I gave myself say you have an entire month to deliver it, you shouldn't be starting on that project 1 week before it's due, or 2 days before it's due, or whatever that, again, depending on the project, there might be a different amount of time that you need to complete it, obviously. But starting it sooner than later. And even if it is just starting it to do a brain dump of like, here's what I know about the project. Okay, let me read through the brief. Here's some ideas I already have. Here's some headlines I'm throwing on. Get that brain dump out there. So again, you're combating the blank page syndrome. You don't have to start with a blank page when you go to actually sit down and focus on the project, maybe deeper, but you're doing something along the way. Yeah. And you're not pressuring yourself to, I'm going to complete this in one sitting, or I'm going to complete this in one day, or whatever it is. Start sooner.
Yeah. This is not high school, right? This is not like, oh, I have a paper due on Thursday, so I'm going to write it Wednesday night or
right.
Thursday morning. On top of the fact too, that, okay, maybe we all work better under deadlines, right? If we didn't have deadlines, we wouldn't do work. Thank goodness for deadlines. Otherwise I wouldn't have a career. However, it's not just about the writing, because you have to write it, but then you also have to edit your work. You have to polish it. And if you are writing up to the deadline, you run the risk of delivering subpar work to your client because you had to turn in something. And I wanted to go back to just very quickly, not to go back, but should you have some kind of emergency, should you have, God forbid, a funeral or someone that you love is in the hospital, or
also
you're
has
in the
happened
hospital.
Recently.
Yes. No, geez. This is also why we have a network, because yes, of course, if there's a hospitalization or if you're something like that, you will say to your client, I'm so sorry. But also, this is why we have a network. So you say, I'm in the hospital, or my significant other's in the hospital. I need to be with them, but I have this project. I've done this much, and I want to introduce you to this copywriter. If you're amenable, I've explained the project to them, and they're going to take over. Yeah. I hope that works for you. Again, I'm so sorry. This is out of my hands, but I hope that this works. You do not want, and I know when it's an emergency, it's like, well, but you still don't want to leave your client in the lurch, right? You don't want to you want to just, I just can't, I have to leave. That's the great thing about having a network, is that you can, and maybe you don't even have time to call someone in your network, call one of your copywriter friends and say, oh my gosh, this just happened. Can I introduce you to the client, and can you take this over? I just can't. And that's why we have networks, because you hopefully this never happens to you, but if it does, then you can pass it off to your colleague who is fantastic, and that your client is taken care of, and you don't have to think about it. You can focus on your loved one or yourself. So anyway, not to get back to darkness, but but just in case, something to know should something like that ever come up.
Yeah, absolutely. The beautiful thing about what we do is that we can prioritize our personal lives And it's, wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not wonderful. It's bad, but it's one of the, we have more flexibility. We're not going to be, we're not going to be fired. And one other tactic to consider using for preventing this in the future is, if you're not already, block time on your calendar. And by block time, I don't just mean like when you have meetings, of course, do that too, but block out, okay, on this day, I'm going to work on this project from this time to this time. And on this day, I'm going to be working on this project. And do it at least a week, maybe a week or two out, depending on your projects, depending on the project timelines. If you have a really long project, maybe breaking that out in chunks so that you are working on it as the project goes, and you're not waiting to the end and just hoping, okay, what am I going to work on today? What's my to-do list? Yes, but I think having it on your calendar and having a visual look, so that even if a client does come back to you and say, oh, hey, can you work on this project? And you're like, yes, I'd really love to work on this project, but ooh, I can't start it till 2 weeks from now or whatever it is. You have a better visual representation of where your time is going and how much time you actually have.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you end up shifting around what you're working on, you're at least accounting for it all on your calendar, and you can move the blocks around, all of that sort of thing. But you can see very quickly where there are, an hour or two blocks in your day that you have time, or where you just absolutely don't have time. So use your calendar. The other thing to avoid these situations in the future, and this is kind of maybe a curveball for you, it's not, hard and fast tactic, is to work on money mindset. I say this from personal experience as someone who for a long time did not say no to projects. And it comes from a place of thinking, well, if I say no to this, then that's money I'm turning down, and there won't be more money in the future. This is all the money that's available to me now. And so therefore
Mm-hmm.
I have to take this. Otherwise I'm not going to earn anything.
Mm-hmm.
And
What if this is the only client that ever wants to work with me? This is the last one.
And trust me, I was there it took a good 3 years, friends, to get to the place of, oh, this is not a fluke. I've had regular, consistent income for 3 years. And it suddenly clicked that, oh, okay, I don't have to take everything on, and I don't have to do it right now. And so again, as long as you're consistently pitching and you're not, repitching old clients, you're doing all the things, work on the money mindset, and
Mm-hmm.
knowing that there's always going to be more work. If you have a system, and CCA students, you have a system. You have a system for finding and landing clients. So you have that system. I know this is easier said than done. It's going to take maybe consistent work. It might be a consistent thing you need to remind yourself. For me, it was the realization of, I will always know how to make money. And that kind of became a mantra for myself, that when I got into these, because you will slip into these situations of like, oh, I haven't had as much work lately. Look at your numbers. That's what I would do as well, to be like, oh, I had so much more money last month because I took on way too much. And so therefore I was invoicing way more. This month, I am within the numbers and my goals that I want and need to hit. I'm good. I don't need to take on more just because last month I did. And that becomes a consistent thing that you need to watch out for, because moving those goalposts is so easy. And it's so easy to get into the mindset of go, 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 that becomes normal, and it becomes much, much harder to slow down. And then when you do slow down, it feels uncomfortable and it feels weird, and it feels like, well, I should be doing more and stressing out more. No, you're just now getting back to a baseline, but your body and brain are still thinking you need to go, 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 go. And so watch moving the goalposts, look at your numbers, have a mantra if you need it of, I will always know how to make money.
Yes.
That was helpful for me. Find what works for you. I think the money mindset thing is a very, I always like scoffed at it, and then it became like, oh, this is very real. This is a very real thing.
Like,
oh yeah, that's why I feel this way and uncomfortable. Yeah. So find the tactics that work for you, but those are just a couple that work for me personally.
And for me, I think it comes down to math, right?
Yeah.
Like mindset is important, but if it helps to have a little bit of logic to get yourself into that mindset, it's simply math. First of all, you have the steps to pitch, right? You know how to do it. CCA students, you know how to do it. But also, there are literally millions of companies out in the world, literally millions. And in order to be a full-time copywriter, if you want to, you probably need between 4 and maybe 6 clients per month. And that's really, you certainly make a 6-figure income with between 4 and 6 clients a month. And a lot of them are going to roll over month over month. So it truly is just math. If you send out enough pitches and you make sure that they're good pitches, go in the Facebook group, get some feedback, make sure that they're good, they're not salesy at all. Our students know our system is very different than the crud that other people are sending out. But it's just math. You follow the steps, you send out the pitches, you make sure they're good pitches, and eventually we'll get clients coming back in. So it truly is just A plus B equals C. But it's when we get into those moments of one project just wrapped up and now this client decided they're not going to do the other project that we were supposed to do. And oh my gosh, sure, I understand. We understand that you can feel that moment of panic, or you can, but you can't let fear and desperation drive you. You just can't, because you won't be, you'll lead a miserable life that way. You should feel those emotions for a moment, but remember, like Kate said, I think it's a great mantra. I will always know how to make money. You have the steps, just follow the steps. And when I have the steps to make money, I will follow the steps and I will make money. That's all that you have to do. And coming back to all of this, that scarcity, that, oh my gosh, what if this is the last client ever? What if nobody else ever wants to hire me? Which is, by the way, I mean, just speaking that out loud, right? Hearing me say it, isn't it kind of goofy? Like, this is not the last client in the world. There are millions of them. This is not the last client. This is not the last person.
The world's last client.
The world's last client. Ooh, scary. Scary, but clearly sci-fi, fantasy. Mm-hmm. But it's that feeling of oh my gosh, what are those? That drives us to say yes to every possible project and to overload ourselves, because we want to make sure that we take all the projects while we possibly can take them. But there is an unending ocean of projects. It's not as long as you keep pitching. I can't really make pitching in the ocean work metaphorically, so you guys are just going to have to stick with me. But it's an unending ocean of projects. As long as you keep those pitches going out, the ocean will keep coming in. And if you try to take
just had
all
a depressing
of it,
metaphor with it, with all the plastic in the ocean. That's
yeah, no, keep that to yourself, miss. But if you try to hoard all of it, you're gonna drown. You're going to drown in projects. I know I went dark anyway. You're going to drown in projects. You're going to metaphorically
We're just here with
drown
so
in
much great news.
Yeah, I know, right? Like,
you're going to drown in plastic.
You're going to drown in plastic and projects. Yeah. No, but the good news is, to take it back to the beginning, is that, first of all, if you become overloaded, which you probably will at some point, you probably will. Yeah, we've all done it. A lot of times, sometimes it happens because we haven't set up good boundaries. Sometimes it happens just because we're like, oh yeah. Sometimes it happens because a client says, "Ooh, actually, we're going to kick that off a week later," and all of a sudden you go, "Oh, whoa, okay, this week is super late. Now this week is overloaded."
Yeah,
it happens.
Or for all three of those reasons at the same time. Hello.
Yes, it happens. But number one, now you know how to deal with it. You have tactics to deal with it. Number two, you also have tactics to help prevent it from happening in the future. So the good news is, wild as it sounds, yeah, at some point in the future, you will have a ton of copywriting projects, maybe even more than you think you can handle. But the even better news is now you know how to handle them and what to do with them. So with that, we will catch you all in the next episode. Bye, everybody. Like what you heard? Hit subscribe so you never miss a video. And if you're ready to take the first step toward becoming a copywriter yourself, sign up for a free video training right here.